Natanz, Esfahan. Obliterated, gone. The words he used on Truth Social, completely and totally destroyed. And this is the kind of message that doesn't just hit headlines. It sends shockwaves throughout global alliances, diplomatic back channels, and the war rooms from Tehran to Beijing. But here's what makes it even more chilling. This announcement didn't come from a Pentagon press room. It didn't come from a polished media rollout. It came directly from President Trump himself, in his own words, on his own platform. He said, Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. And if that wasn't a line written for history books, he followed it up with something else that froze the blood of every strategist in the Iranian regime. He said, there will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran. And this was the hard part. Read that again, guys. This was the hard part. Now, this wasn't just rhetoric. This was a promise and a threat at the same time. It means what we just witnessed, the complete dismantling of Iran's nuclear future, wasn't even the full show. It was only the opening act. And if Tehran doesn't bend, the next wave, well, it's going to be faster, it's going to be uglier, and it's going to be unforgiving. Now, you might be wondering, why now? Why this exact moment? Well, I'm going to get there because the answer actually ties directly into the U.S. economy, Scott Bessent's jaw-dropping revelation, and why working class wages are rising faster than anyone thought possible. But first, of course, we need to go a little bit deeper into the mission itself, because what happened just now wasn't just a warning shot. It was the most advanced coordinated strike in modern history. So let's go ahead and break it down. What actually happened? This was no symbolic fireworks show, guys. This was a surgical military operation, if I've ever seen one, carried out with maximum precision using some of the most advanced weaponry ever developed. And it hit 3 of Iran's most sensitive nuclear facilities all in one synchronized assault. Target number 1 was Fordow. This site is not just underground, it's deep beneath a mountain south of Qom. Fordow has been long described as this impenetrable location, but Trump sent a message that no mountain is safe when the B-2 Spirit is in the air. So how did we do it, right? Well, 2 words: massive ordnance penetrators, also known as MOPs. These are 30,000-pound bunker-busting bombs designed to drill into hardened structures before exploding. So first bomb creates a shaft 25 feet wide down 200 feet into the rock. The second bomb, dropped into the same shaft, detonates the core. And Trump didn't just send 1 B-2, he sent 6. I mean, I probably would have sent 2. He said, hey, we're not going to mess this up. We're going to make sure that this gets done. Each one capable of carrying 2 of these monsters. So guys, simple math shows us that that was 12 bunker busters, precision timed and GPS targeted, punching through a facility that the Iranian regime once believed was their ace in the hole. You know, did anyone catch that joke? Ace in the hole? Anyway, it's gone. Target number 2 was Natanz. Natanz was Iran's main uranium enrichment facility. Now, you probably heard that name for years. If not, you've definitely heard it this week. Well, it's been attacked before. They've attacked Natanz with cyber attacks and sabotage, but they always rebuilt it, but not this time, guys. Sources confirm that the site was leveled. The centrifuges, the control rooms, vaporized. This time, there is no reboot. The lesser known, but also less critical site is Esfahan. So this facility dealt with centrifuge production and nuclear material refinement. Now, what was once a quiet cornerstone of Iran's nuclear infrastructure is now just a crater. These were not random targets. This wasn't shock and awe. This was decapitation, the strategic equivalent of cutting off the regime's nuclear head. And this wasn't just a U.S. operation. No, guys, this was a joint strategic offensive carried and ultimately backed by Israel's weeks-long campaign of softening the skies. Since June 12th, Israel has been quietly removing Iran's air defense systems one by one. Surface-to-air missile platforms, gone. Radars scrambled, radar stations scrambled, communication hubs, dark. They even eliminated 14 top Iranian nuclear scientists and over 50 high-ranking generals, including heads of Iran's Air Force, the drone program, and even the ballistic missile command. Now, you might be asking, why? To clear the way so that when the U.S. bombers arrived, there would be no resistance, there would be no interference, and no chance to escape. And it worked. Because President Trump himself praised Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Israeli military, saying, "No team has ever worked like this before. We've erased the threat to Israel and to the world." So let's be clear, guys. This wasn't just a military victory. This was an absolute checkmate. But here is what nobody expected. While Iran's facilities were being turned into rubble, something else was exploding right here at home. Wages. Yeah, you heard that right, guys. At the same moment that the world was watching the skies, President Trump was pulling off something that no other president has ever done. And the numbers just came in. Real wages after inflation for working class Americans are surging. But why is this happening? And why did Scott Bessent just reveal what does Scott Bessent just reveal about President Trump's economic endgame? Well, before we get to that, I want you to understand that if you're helping a parent or a loved one with Medicare, there is something you absolutely need to know. Paulette Diener, she called Chapter on behalf of her son. She said, they helped fix a Medicare mess that we've been dealing with for over a year. It was a blessing. Marianne Conley, she said, Chapter is fantastic. My guy Vance is a hero in my eyes. We also have multiple other viewers of our YouTube channel leaving all sorts of amazing updates when they call Chapter. The average senior, by the way, guys, is saving approximately $1,500 a year thanks to Chapter. So whether you're the one that's enrolled or maybe you're the one that's helping someone who's enrolled in Medicare, Chapter makes the process a million times simpler. They're kinder and they're way more affordable. In fact, did I mention that they're free? Yeah, the service is actually free. It's unbelievable. So reach out to Chapter right now. Phone numbers in the description down below, in the pinned comment as well. It might even be on your screen at this point. Or better yet, hit them up on their website at askchapter.org/Ron. Helping someone you know starts with getting the right support. Now, guys, while the media was over here scrambling, trying to cover the ruins in Iran, something just as explosive, if not more so, is happening right here in the United States. And no, it's not a headline on CNN. It's not a talking point from the White House briefing room. It is actually coming straight from the man who handles America's checkbook, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. So this week, Scott Bessent dropped what can only be described as a truth bomb on the economic world, a revelation that shatters every prediction made by the so-called experts under the last administration. So I want to talk numbers here. Real wages up 2% in just 5 months, guys. In only 5 months under President Trump's second term. Real wages for hourly, non-supervisory workers, the backbone of this country, they have jumped by 2%. Now, for the context, that's not 2% before inflation. That is after inflation. That is real money. It's real spending power, and it's something that no other U.S. president has ever accomplished in this time frame. In April alone, just 1 month, household income grew by 7 to 8%. Let me repeat that. Some of you guys might have been spacing off or whatever, yelling at the kids, checking the microwave because it was beeping. Let me repeat that, guys. 7 to 8% in 1 month. That is not a blip. That is not a fluke. That is a tectonic shift in the economy. And it all happened while the media was screaming about a recession. Y'all remember that, right? They warned that President Trump's return would tank the economy, that tariffs would skyrocket inflation, that wages would stall, shelves would be empty, and that the U.S. dollar would collapse. Wrong, and wrong again. So how did all this happen, right? How did working class Americans start winning again while the establishment was rooting for a crash? Scott Bessent gave us the answer. And it's a bombshell. Let me tell you right now. So Scott Bessent was clear. This wage growth has nothing to do with minimum wage laws, stimulus checks, or government handouts. This is about removing the pressure on wages that's been silently crushing the American worker for decades. It's not a minimum wage law. It's displacement reversal. This actually came from Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary of the United States. So what does this mean? Well, it means under Joe Biden, under the previous president, over 11 million illegal immigrants enter this country, many of them willing to work for rock bottom wages in construction, warehouse jobs, manufacturing, agriculture, you name it. That flooded the labor pool and it dragged down the pay for legal tax-paying Americans. Trump, he shut the floodgates. He didn't just slow it down, he stopped it. And when the flow of cheap labor dried up, employers had no choice but to hire Americans again. And so, not just hire them again, but actually pay them more money. This isn't politics. This is basic supply and demand. You remove the undercutting, and all of a sudden, real wages surge. And Bessent he's not hiding from the backlash. In fact, he even clapped back at critics in the media who called his policies populist. Wall Street's had a great run. Now it's Main Street's turn. Powerful words, guys, because for decades, the working class was told to wait, to be patient, to settle. Not anymore, though. Now they are rising. But this isn't just an economic trend. It's a part of a larger strategy that's finally being revealed. And of course, we've talked about the bombs, we've talked about the wages, but now it's time to talk about the why. Because if you're thinking that this is all just a coincidence, that Trump's return to office just happened to come with record wage growth, a crippled Iranian regime, and a rebounding economy, then I think you're missing the real story. Because as Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent just made crystal clear, none of this was accidental. Bessent sat down for a new interview this week, one that barely made the networks, but is spreading like wildfire underground. So in it, he laid out what President Trump's been planning since day one of his second term: stabilize America, rebuild the middle class, lock in financial dominance for generations. But here's the part that really stuck with me. Wall Street's had a great run. Now it's Main Street's turn. Now, I don't think that's just a slogan. That's a mission statement. For decades, America's working class has been sacrificed at the altar of the sake of global profits. Manufacturing shipped out, cheap labor shipped in, wages flatlined, Wall Street soared, Silicon Valley exploded, Washington profited, and you barely got any breadcrumbs. But not anymore, guys. Trump's mission, according to Scott Bessent, is to reverse the rigging and give working class Americans a real shot at prosperity again. So here's the kicker. This wasn't just about fixing what Biden broke. This was about rebuilding the entire system, starting from the foundation. And the plan is much bigger than anyone could have imagined. So in that interview, Bessent outlined 3 core goals that are now driving everything that we're seeing, from military strikes abroad to economic revival at home. But I want to go ahead and break them down. So, and this is not hyperbole, by the way. Trump's team is laying the groundwork to ensure that America is not just strong now, but unshakable for centuries. So this means cutting out waste, ending endless wars, and replacing short-term politics with long-term strategies. And we've seen it in action already. Illegal labor flow stopped, wages rising, employers forced to hire Americans again. This is Trump rebalancing the economic scales, and it's clearly working. So this one, it is a move that the global elites fear the most. With BRICS nations trying to form alternative currency blocks with China and Russia scheming to dethrone the dollar, Trump's team is working behind the scenes to make sure that America stays the economic anchor of the world. Because if the dollar goes, we lose everything. Our leverage, our markets, our freedom. Scott Bessent says They're already implementing multi-stage strategies to strengthen the dollar's role, some of which haven't been even revealed yet. He said, I've got ideas that we're working on now to secure that leadership for generations, he said. Now think about that, guys. This isn't just a presidency. This is an economic realignment. And just as the world begins to grasp what President Trump has just pulled off, the threat of war rises again. Because Iran, they're not taking this lying down. So the question now becomes, was it enough? Was obliterating Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan the end of Iran's nuclear ambitions? Was delivering the fastest blue-collar wage growth in modern U.S. history the climax of Trump's second term? Oh, no, not even close. Because today, tonight, whenever you happen to be watching this video, just hours after the world watched those explosions light up the Iranian sky, Tehran responded, not with silence, not with diplomacy, but with defiance. Iran's foreign minister just hours ago delivered this message directly to Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff. He said, we are not seeking negotiations. We have nothing to discuss with the United States. That wasn't whispered in some diplomatic hallway, guys. That was shouted through the press with pride. Iran then doubled down. Another senior official told Reuters, quote, zero enrichment is undoubtedly rejected, meaning they're still enriching uranium. They're still building the materials required for nuclear weapons, even after being bombed back into the Stone Age. Why? Well, it's because this isn't about negotiations anymore. This is about religious zealotry, ideology, martyrdom. Iran's leadership would rather burn than be seen bowing down to America. And that creates a rather terrifying reality. We may be forced to strike again. And make no mistake, guys, we are ready right now. Tonight, 6 more B-2 Spirit stealth bombers are confirmed to be in the air following mid-air refueling patterns consistent with heavy payloads. Translation, they're not just flying practice runs. Each B-2 can carry 2 30,000-pound MOPs, which are these massive ordnance penetrators. That is 12 bunker busters, currently locked and loaded with targets still undisclosed. But that's not all, guys. Satellite imagery just confirmed something that every military analyst is now buzzing about. At Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia, just 1,300 miles from Tehran, there is now a staggering buildup of U.S. and allied air power. I'm talking 54 F-16 fighter jets, 22 KC-135 aerial refueling tankers, 11 C-130 support aircraft. This isn't positioning. This is preparation for something huge. And it's clear President Trump gave Iran a timeline. He said 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Surrender your enrichment program or face whatever comes next. And based on what Iran just told us, they have no intention on backing down. The Middle East, they've lit a fuse. And once again, America is holding the match. But it gets worse. Because while the bombs may be falling across oceans, something just as explosive and far more shocking is happening right here at home. A letter was just delivered to Kash Patel from a man at the center of the most horrifying political crimes in U.S. history. And what he wrote in that letter, it could bring down an entire governorship and implicate multiple people inside the democratic machine. So while everybody was watching the skies over Iran, something horrible was unfolding in America's heartland. A political assassination, a cover-up unraveling in real time, and a confession letter that just blew the lid off of what might be the most deranged political plot in modern U.S. history. So I want to let's go ahead and break this down. So just days ago, Minnesota was rocked by a mass shooting that left a state senator and her spouse dead. Okay. 2 others were injured and the entire state legislature was left reeling. The shooter Vance Bolton, a man who had been quietly appointed by Governor Tim Walz to a working board just months prior. But it gets even worse than that. So much worse, actually. Bolton didn't flee. He didn't lawyer up. He wrote a letter. And he didn't send it to MSNBC or the FBI. He sent it to Kash Patel. In that letter, Bolton confesses in writing that he was not only appointed by Tim Walz, but that he was hired by Walz to take out Senator Amy Klobuchar so that he could assume her seat. That's right, guys. An alleged political assassination order from a sitting U.S. governor. And that confession doesn't end there. Bolton also claims he was trained by the U.S. military off the books. No official record, no oversight, covert tactical instruction. Think about that, guys. This wasn't just some random lunatic with a gun. This was a man placed in a government, trained and armed, now claiming he was instructed to take out a sitting U.S. senator. And then he acted. And here's where it gets really chilling, as if that wasn't chilling enough. The FBI held a press conference, and the timeline that they revealed raises a terrifying question. Was Vance Bolton ever meant to survive? Police arrived before he entered Representative Melissa Hortman's house. They engaged. A shootout ensued. Bolton fired into the home repeatedly and then rushed in through the front door. But he lived. And now he's talking. So that breaks the pattern, because almost every political shooter in recent memory, they didn't make it to trial. They don't make it out alive. So we never hear their story. But this time we did. And so now we have to ask ourselves, was Bolton meant to be silenced before his story ever reached daylight? Did the plan go wrong somehow? And what does the FBI really know about this network? Can we trust what the FBI says to us? Do you think that this is maybe just one crazy man, or maybe there's something far bigger, deeper, darker? Well, guys, all I can say is we're not done, because if you think Iran's aggression and this Minnesota bombshell are just parallel crises, you would be wrong. They are connected. They are connected through one central theme. The system is unraveling, the old guard is desperate, and Trump, he's pulling back the curtain. So let's be honest, most people are not ready to accept what's really happening right now. Because if they did, they would have to admit that the world as they knew it just ended, right? I mean, they would have to admit that while the media mocked Trump, while the establishment laughed, while the elites screamed dictator, he was executing one of the most coordinated comebacks in global history. And now he's not just back, he's in full control. In just, count them, 5 months, Trump crippled Iran's nuclear future with a surgical 3-target strike the world never saw coming. Trump's economic team triggered the fastest real wage surge for working Americans in modern memory. Meanwhile, Biden's so-called experts predicted doom and recession. Trump's administration, without apology, exposed a deep, corrupt rot in our own political system, from sanctuary chaos to what many now include governors who hire assassins. This wasn't luck. This wasn't reaction. This was strategy from day one, conviction, if you will. And most of all, leadership. For years, the American people have been told to lower their expectations. They were told they could not win, that the world was too complicated, that our decline was inevitable. Trump just ripped that lie right out by the roots. And he replaced that lie with action, with results, with power. So here's the hard truth. Yes, Iran's facilities are gone, but the regime refuses to back down. Yes, wages are up, but the same Wall Street elites who offshored your jobs, they're now trying to undermine Main Street's rise. And yes, Trump is exposing corruption. But now we know at least some of that corruption was sitting right inside of our own government. Guys, this isn't just about politics anymore. This is about what kind of country do we even want to live in? Like, do we stand for peace through strength or surrender through fear? Do we fight for working class prosperity or let the donor class write our future? Do we believe in law, truth, justice, or do we just let whispers in the back rooms decide who lives and who dies? These are not hypotheticals anymore. They're here. This is the test. This is the fire. And Trump, he just lit the fuse for freedom. So, guys, if you've made it this far, you already know the truth. Share this video before it gets buried. Comment down below what part of this video hit you the hardest. Subscribe now, because the next chapter, I promise you, is coming fast. And you need to be ready, because like it or not, Trump just ended the old world and a new one is rising. I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.